After you've loaded your film in the camera, you will then take your left hand and support the lens with your left hand. And using your right hand, you lift the camera to your brow, place the viewfinder to your brow, and then you can begin to frame your photograph and focus using the focusing ring. It's very important to remember to focus. You always need to focus a photograph. After you've become comfortable holding your camera, I'd like you to locate the shutter speed dial, which is located at the top of your camera. And with this sort of older version of a manual camera, you can shoot anywhere from 1 second, half a second, a quarter of a second, an eighth, a 15th, a 30th, a 60th, through 1/1000th. You do not have as many increments in between as you would with one of the electronic cameras, electronic SLRs. The shutter speed. The shutter speed works in combination with the aperture to decide whether it's a good exposure or not. The aperture is also known as the f-stop, which we have talked about in class. This dial is the shutter dial. So you can see starts with 1 second, and then after that 2 represents a half second, 4 a quarter of a second, 8 an eighth of a second, 15 a 15th of a second, 30 1/30th of a second. The 30 is a key number to keep in mind. I don't want you to go below a 30th of a second in this class. Always shoot above a 30th of a second. So you may shoot at a 60th of a second, 1/125th, 1/250th, 1/500th, or 1/1000th. Again, you can shoot at 1/30th as well, but do not shoot any shutter speed any slower than that. This is the aperture ring, and aperture is the circumference of the opening of the shutter when it is released. That's how much light is let in and is absorbed by the film. The lowest number aperture, or f-stop, is f1.7 on this lens, and the highest number, if we click over, is f16. The difference between f16 and f1.7 is that f16 is the smallest circumference the shutter will open when it opens, and f1.7 is the largest opening. The largest opening allows more light to come in, obviously, than the smaller opening. So you have to adjust your shutter dial to reflect that using your light meter as a guide. Now, aperture also affects depth of field. f1.7, widest aperture opening, will be the shallowest depth of field, which means one plane of the photograph will be in focus. Whether that's the foreground, the middle ground, or the background is up to you to use your selective focus using the focusing ring. As you move up in the aperture dial, something f2.8 is still pretty shallow depth of field. f4 becomes a little longer depth of field, where you might have 1.5 to 2 planes in focus. f5.6, the same. f8, you begin to have almost all 3 planes in the photograph in focus. And f11 and f16 is the longest depth of field, where everything is in focus across the photographic plane. To release the shutter on this type of camera, you press this button. First you have to wind the film to advance it to the next frame, and then you always will wind it again, and it will advance to the next frame again.